In the business case for sustainability, savings associated with waste can be very significant. Looking at the framework, the three justification framework for the business case for sustainability initiatives, the savings on waste fall within the capture new opportunities category. Specifically, they're one of the many savings that are possible when you implement sustainability projects. So waste is one of a cluster of them, but a very significant one, especially if a company is in the manufacturing sector or is in a heavy consumption sector. The potential for savings is actually quite shocking. In a book, Natural Capitalism, back in 1999, there was an estimate that companies produce 93% of their output as waste and only 7% as product. That's pretty appalling. Then there's another estimate, in this case a paint shop, where 60% of the value of the materials purchased ends up being wasted, either in wastewater or solid waste or in emissions to the air. So when we're looking at this, it's important to be conservative, and in the business cases that I've put together, I've been quite conservative and said that the amount of waste coming out of a company is only 30% of what comes into the company, and go with that. In your particular company, it may be more. Sometimes it's also helpful to take a look at what makes up that waste. Some of it is construction waste, which is this part here. A lot of it's paper, which is kind of appalling. Some of it is glass, some of it is metal, some of it is organic material, which is almost as appalling as paper, which should never end up in a landfill site. So when we look at the full cost of waste, what we're talking about is not only the cost of getting rid of it, of hauling it away and dumping it somewhere, but we're also talking about all of the wasted investment in that waste that happened before it was thrown out. So buying the materials in the first place, processing the materials before they actually need to be thrown out, all of the processes that are in place to try to prevent this, as well as the cost. So the actual cost of waste, which a lot of people think is just the cost of hauling it and dumping it, is actually just a small piece of it. It's the full cost of waste is significantly more expensive. The label that's being used for this end of pipe waste that is still there is zero waste to landfill, or zero to landfill, or landfill free facilities. And what we're finding is this is a flat out good business proposition. General Motors is making over $1 billion a year by repurposing waste that they used to actually pay to have hauled away. UNILEVER is making over $226 million a year. Lots of good jobs as a result of that. So this is catching on in various industries, various sectors, various kinds of companies. It's just flat out smart business to stop throwing away stuff that can be otherwise used by other folks. So what this leads to is the idea of waste equals food, which was coined by Bill McDonough and Michael Brungard in this incredible book, Cradle to Cradle. Excellent book. And it talks about this notion of industrial ecology, where the waste from one company becomes the raw material for another company, and the waste from that company becomes the raw material for another company. So you have companies that are taking advantage of the availability of materials that other companies actually don't need, don't want, and therefore you start to get this symbiotic relationship between these organizations, some of which actually co-locate to make the transportation of these products, these materials, more handy. This is just a slide to reinforce what I mentioned before about General Motors and the fact that it's getting into landfill-free facilities across the world for good business reasons, because it's making a lot of money from this approach towards waste that used to be a costly item. Waste has changed from being a cost and expense to being a revenue stream. And they're certainly not alone. Let me just give you a few other examples of companies that are making money, saving money by being smarter about their waste. So Unilever, 93 million just by reusing things that they used to send to landfill. IKEA, over £1 million a year on their waste disposal costs. Very simple stuff. Some of it has to do with the packaging and the way in which they both package and bag their products. This is an interesting example of engaging employees in a suggestion program that's called Pollution Prevention Pays. This started many, many years ago in 3M. They were one of the pioneers in this, and they have saved an awful lot of energy, over $2 billion in first-year savings since this program started in 1975. So this is just flat-out smart business, and as you get employees engaged in treasure hunts for opportunities to be able to save on waste, you'll be amazed at what they discover. Another example of XEROX interface, Walmart. And notice that this is just recycling cardboard and plastic, a lot of which is associated with packaging. So they're trying to reduce their packaging, and they think that by doing that, they're going to make a ton of money. This is an example of structural waste. It's a bit detailed, but it's quite a shocking diagram about the fact that we're wasting things that simply aren't being used. So in a way, we're wasting a lot of cars because we only use them 5% of the time, and the rest of the time they're doing something else. They're not transporting us from one place to another. And this is another way in which we are wasting fuel on a whole bunch of other things other than actually moving the people in the car, which is the little red tip at the top. So in some ways, there are structural ways that we are wasting resources as well as simply throwing them out. Let me just go through a quick example of what the take, make, waste model looks like for our current approach to the way in which we do things in business. First thing is we take from the environment. So this is a sort of a rectangular representation of the nested interdependencies model of sustainability, which shows the environment on the outside, the nest of society, and then the economy. So we take things from the environment, we take them into plants, we make things with them. Some of that ends up with waste that goes to landfill, unfortunately, back into the environment. We produce products, and when we're finished with the products, they're thrown out as well. So they end up very often in landfill sites as waste. And the extraction process itself drives waste. So we're creating waste in multiple ways, and that's just an unsustainable approach. Instead, what we need to do is to tap into a borrow, use, return model, which means that we borrow things from nature, we move them into plants, we use them to produce goods. When those goods are produced, if there is waste associated with them, we put them back into the supply chain and either use them ourselves or use those materials in a different way or sell them to somebody else. When we produce the product, in this case newspapers, those newspapers are used, we borrow them, we read them, we use them, and then we return them. So what happens is we are actually ending up with a much more sustainable approach towards the use of our precious natural resources or natural capital and preventing things escaping into the environment. This is all within society and within the business. So this notion of a circular economy has come into vogue in recent years, and what it's really showing is that as we take resources from nature, from the environment, and we process them, and we go through first and second stage manufacturing, and we send them to retailers, and we use them, and then we throw them out, we've got to be smarter about the way in which we make sure that those things stay in circulation. And there is a lot of good work that's gone on in the circular economy, and the implications of that are far more than just waste. Very, very profound touch on a lot of the sustainability issues, and is an excellent model for us to consider for any business. Here's a nice acronym, which, this is a diagram that shows biological cycling. So what we're talking about here is not allowing compostable material to escape into the environment, but instead we use it for good purposes. And then there's something called technical cycles. And this is again a Brongart and McDonough kind of term that's used to make sure that those things don't escape into the environment as well. So this is another version of how a circular economy comes into vogue. And then there is this wonderful little acronym for resolve, for regenerate, sharing, optimizing, looping, virtualizing, and exchanging. So virtualizing is dematerializing. Sharing is a lot of the kinds of things we're hearing more and more about, where the shared economy or shareable economy or shared economy starts to kick in, and using things to regenerate the way in which we accomplish things, both at home and at work. And this isn't just good for the economy, good for the environment and good for society. It's good for the business. It's good for the economy. So we end up with a significant reduction of the product footprint, of the production costs, and in risks associated with supply chain operations. So this is a good business proposition. So companies are signing up for this. So the circular economy, or 100% circular economy group, includes both organizations from the private sector and public sector. This makes universal good business sense, and it's another way of being much, much smarter about avoiding waste in the first place, and if there is waste, making sure that we keep it in circulation. So when we look at the superset of sustainability benefits, or benefits that are possible from sustainability kinds of initiatives and projects, there's a pretty big, hefty set of them here, but I just want to reinforce that waste is certainly one that has a lot of potential in the cost justification of sustainability projects. So as we're estimating how much that saving might be, we want to take advantage of the same 7 estimation tips that apply to many of the other things by tapping into experts within the company as to what they think might be possible, and similar experience that the company might have had with other things, perhaps under the guise of quality or lean manufacturing, and extrapolate from that experience or experience from others in your sector, other business organizations that you're members of, research from a variety of sources, some of the comments that are in the worksheets and the workbooks associated with the business case for sustainability that are free and downloadable from my website, and make sure that you do a sensitivity analysis of a range of possibilities that might be appropriate for this particular line item, and be conservative so that you protect your credibility. So lots of opportunity there. I encourage you to explore it. This has got some big potential and could be a significant contributor to the business case for sustainability initiatives.